Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series in officially licensed cars engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
The final round before the summer break comes into play, and 10 final rounds of the championship of a run-in of truly epic proportions. The last chance to say that early form completes itself is here at the Hungaroring, as we find ourselves on the pest side of Budapest. The towns of Buda and Pest meshed together to make the city of Budapest. This is the Hungaroring, the circuit that the Iron Curtain brought to racing action, and it's here with us on SimSpeed TV. Your iRacing Grand Prix Tour here for 2025 hits round 14. My name's Jake Sperry. Along with me for the ride today is Taylor Mills, as we got Daniel Yeaman awake today in the production truck for us. We do apologise, of course, for missing action last time out at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, but Taylor, as we take a little bit of an understanding of what the Hungaroring is, it's one of those circuits that is more of the higher downforce variety, but seems to always throw up a little something extra.
It certainly is, Sperry, and it is wonderful to be back in Hungary and at the Hungaroring. It is a track often touted as Monaco without the barriers, and the circuit profile certainly fits that one. Like Monaco, it's got a couple of high-speed, high-commitment corners, with the biggest one of those being up at turn 5 that you'll see very shortly. It's seen a few different faces over the years, and even this year has had a bit of work done on that start-finish straight. Not present in iRacing as the iRacing curse strikes yet again, but it is 14 corners that lay out in front of our field, and they will be tackling those with full gusto for all 70 laps of this track. One or two good overtaking opportunities down into one, maybe into two, and then into turn 12 as well with two DRS zones down the start finish straight and into turn 2. It is going to be very tricky for overtaking, but those overtakes, Sperry, are going to have to be spectacular.
They are going to have to be on point, because that is a straight that you only just have enough to get it done at turn number 1, and then you sometimes have the effect of a double bout of DRS or the opportunity to attack back depending on where you are in the braking zone heading into that first detection point. Now, we do note that the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps came along, and it did throw up a few interesting scenarios for the championship. It was Eduardo Radice who picked up the victory ahead of Alex Hagland, who for the first time got himself in with a podium, scored 18 championship points in the SimSpeed Championship. That's more than the 15 championship points he's ever scored in the SimSpeed Championship. Jacob Reed would finish off in third, with Voltalux and George van Rensburg fourth and fifth, ahead of Kent Nielsen, Florian Kammerer, Dennis Branch scoring his first ever points in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, Paul O'Regan in ninth, and on debut, Elias Sauer picking up his first points in 10th position, or first point, just the one. Pole position went to Eduardo Radice, and then the fastest lap belonged to Voltalux for his fourth fastest lap in iRacing Grand Prix Tour history. Balázs Gallagher, very unlucky, Taylor, to not score a SimSpeed Championship point, has yet to do so, and is at risk of becoming one of those drivers who has some of the most starts without scoring a point. Eric Bursma's got 7, Balázs Gallagher has got 9 championship points, and with Balázs Gallagher here today, could tie that record with Paul Hadley for 10 starts without a point.
Yeah, thankfully, as you said, Sperry, Gallagher is going to have a chance to score points again here today. It's a track that he's not too bad at and looked pretty comfortable here last year. And being as close as he was to that top 10 last time out in Spa, this could be the chance for him to take that first championship point of his iRacing Grand Prix Tour career. Quick peek at the iRacing Championship standings, though. Eduardo Radice still stands proudly at the top of that, with Florian Kammerer trailing by only 350 points. Jacob Reed, though, 150 points further back, down by 500. That is going to make it very tricky for him to snatch that one in the final 10 rounds. Voltalux, 200 points further back on that. He's got some work to do if he wants to get up there. But, Sperry, what we've been focusing on all season long has really been the SimSpeed Championship.
And it's been 50 now that becomes the key number. Jacob Reed walked into this championship, by the way, in his career only ever having 1 third place finish, and he's had back-to-back to now put himself up to 3 thirds in his career, and he's now 50 points back because of it. Florian Kammerer is back at 73 championship points, and Voltalux at 89 back out there. It's a 4-horse championship at the moment, with James Byrne in 5th, Emil Bernstorff, who has been MIA, in 6th position, with George van Rensburg, Edward Apari-Ari in 8th, Kent Nielsen jumping up with a 6th place finish to go to 9th, just leapfrogging ahead of the likes of Jorge Martinez. So that makes up your top 10. as it goes. Kent Nielsen a 5th and a 6th in the last 2 rounds, finding a purple patch of form at this moment in time. This is a 70-lap race here today. Jacob Reed has won the last 2 editions of the Hungaroring race, with Matteo Ugolotti winning in 2022. They must use 2 tyre compounds, comparing to the soft, the medium and the hard. They'll have DRS at the end of lap 2, start of lap 3, and critically, it is 70 laps here today, which means they've got a lot of the same clockwise circuit to try and deal with.
They certainly do. They're going to be seeing those 14 corners a very, very high number of times. Speaking of 70 laps doable on the medium compounded tyres if you look after them. The real-life tyres, I can never remember what order these go in, but I think they're 1 step softer than we see in iRacing, which is, of course, helping that tyre life that you are seeing up on the screen. Pit lane time loss all the way up in the, well, say up in the low 20 seconds. But that is going to leave pit strategy a little bit close-ended as we have a peek at what those projected strategies are going to be. Potential fastest, that data from Voltalux, as always, is 21 laps on the mediums and then see it out to the end. 49 laps all the way on the soft. But the rider Redis liked to go 50-50 on his strategy earlier today with 34 on the medium, 36 on the soft. But last time out, Jacob Reed taking a slightly shorter first stint and then pushing it all the way to the end on those softs. Get those mediums out the way early, go full pace or maximize your pace on those softs and see where you shake out. It is going to be an interesting strategy today as to when you decide to take that pit stop.
It certainly will do. We've got qualifying currently underway, and the key is going to be this: who can put their times on the board? And I look down and see a second lap time that did not count for Jacob Reed, who's second in the championship, all the way down in 17th position to get 3 straight wins here at the Hungaroring. It's going to have to take a modern miracle, as Alex Hagland's qualified well and brings the car into the pits. Mark van Dalen is there, but here, first start ever for Tom Kleeman here, representing Flag Australia here today. One for Dan Yeaman in the production truck to have a little bit of a silent cheer about as he makes progress. 2 debutants here today as well, because Jeffrey Lawler is also making his first start, but Kleeman very narrow going through turn 9 into turn 10.
Yeah, and this is a really tricky corner as well. We've seen it be almost, abandons to that, but everything can go wrong down at turn 11. We saw that huge crash for Sergio Perez back in 2016 in practice. That curb, certainly a tricky one to deal with. If you get sideways over there, can't quite get caught in the grass in the same way in sim as you can in real life, but certainly something to look out for. Jared Burrell coming across the line for a 1:18.551 that launches him up into 11th place. One of the drivers who actually got an invalid second lap was Kent Nielsen. So looking at that down in 15th, he will be starting well out of position. But as we tick through the final seconds of qualifying, our grid looks just about set for today's race.
It definitely does, and so we can run that through with you here with the 21 drivers that are out and about. So it will be a pole position for a very, very quick Swedish driver. Emil Lundell is never too far away from a pole position. It's his 6th in iRacing Grand Prix Tour history. Has Eduardo Redis, the championship leader, alongside for company on that front row, 3/10 quicker. It's magical from Emil Lundell. Voltalux will go from third, partnering up, with Florian Kammer in 4th position, as Alex Hagland, after that second place at Spa, will put the car in 5th, with Reynaldo Augusto in 6th position. Into 7th place, it will be Mark van Dalen, who has just moved into the top 10 all-time for most retirements now, with 7 retirements out there. Edward Apari-Ari will be alongside then in position number 8. It will then follow with James Byrne in 9th on his debut season, along with Dennis Branch, who got his first points last time out at Spa. Gerard Burrell will go from 11th, with Eric Bursma in 12th position, saying it's one of the last chances he has to run this season to score points and opportunities. Mr. Top 10, Paul O'Regan starts 13th, with Jason Green alongside him 14th. Then it's Kent Nielsen and Sebastian Rekhoff in in 15th and 16th. Row 9 has Nick Burke and Jacob Reed for company. Nick Burke just needing 1 point to total over 100 SimSpeed Championship points. And then the 3 that did not set a time in qualifying, split by their iRacing. Tom Kleeman ahead of Balazs Galliard on home soil, and Jeffrey Lawler going from 21st position on the grid. The American will have work to do from back there with a semi-decent run up towards turn number 1 on circuit. The fast run down into a heavy braking zone. We've seen it be a bowling alley in certain races in the real world, but we hope to avoid that here today as the drivers have 2 minutes to get themselves gridded up or elect to start from pit lane, which is something that we do sometimes get to see. Emil Lundell on a soft tyre. Balazs Galliard is on a hard tyre. Everyone else has chosen a medium. Let's get ourselves ready then from the Hungaroring. Round 14 of the championship gets underway. A lot of blinking from Emil Lundell. He doesn't get the best start, but what a launch by Volta Lux, who now looks to push it 3 wide, straight through the middle, in towards turn number 1. Will Radice be aggressive on the brakes as they run on through the outside line? Works well for Emil Lundell, and now it's drive off the exit. Brilliant stuff. Lundell with the soft tyres, able to hold. Lux has got himself up to second. Eduardo Radice trying to work around the outside in third. Can't really do too much about it, but critically, everybody has worked themselves through the first 2 corners effectively, and now the charging begins. Jacob Reed already up into the top 10.
And that was a commanding start from Volta Lux from the second row to get it stuck right down the middle of Emil Lundell and Eduardo Radice and snatch that second place down into turn 1. That shuffles Radice back into third. He's got space behind him to Alex Haglund, but it puts him in a spot that he's not been in for a long time in this season, and he's going to have so much work to do to get himself back into the lead of that race. But Jacob Reed up 9 spots on lap 1 into P9. What a start for the Brit.
Yeah, went through on Mark van Dalen because of Florian Kammerer going slow at the chicane, having to leave room for Renato Augusto. Eduardo Radice now down into 3rd position. Alex Haglund just behind him 4th. And there's Jeffrey Lawler, who's had a good first start to his race here in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour as he goes side by side with Kent Nielsen. 1 car dives into the pits. That's Dennis Branch, and I would think that going into the pits this early on the opening lap is a committed decision, and there's a spinner in the back, and that is Sebastian Rekhoff. It looks like, no, maybe Eric Bursma.
Oh, it might have been Eric Bursma, I think, just going off in that final corner, finding himself down pit lane with some damage. 2 cars already taken to the pit lane, one of them without a rear wing, so for that it's going to be day done. But we've got a bit of a scrap going out on track. Kent Nielsen and Jeffrey Lawler absolutely going at it, squeezing each other down into turn 1 as well. Don't know if we get a replay of that at all, but Nielsen, as we've seen in the past, Sperry, just not giving those spots up, but Lawler wants that P13.
Definitely does, and a lap then scored in the books, and everyone will now be trying to give themselves a good platform to move forward as far as this race goes. Jacob Reed now up into 8th position. He's through on James Byrne, and remember, we don't even have the drag reduction system active yet. That was just a wiggle, a huge wiggle from James Byrne actually through turn 3, which opened up the climb to turn 4 and made that move happen. Jacob Reed having an absolutely stellar start.
But talking about that DRS not being active yet, as we do start lap 3, so this is when it is going to go live. One driver that's going to be so grateful for that is Emil Lundell on that soft compound tyre, on that alternate strategy, already 2 seconds clear of Volta Lux and Eduardo Radice. Fortunately for him, there is going to be a chance of Radice and Lux scrapping it out and costing each other time, because Lundell needs to make the most of these soft tyres, because with how heavy the car is, with how hot the track is, those Red Bull tyres are going to drop off a lot quicker than he might otherwise want.
Yeah, and he's also going to have to take his medicine. When everyone's on a quick tyre, he'll be on a slow tyre, so he'll be trying to hold on at the end of the race as we are on board with Florian Kammerer here in position number 5, staring down Alex Haglund in 4th position, who is starting to find some form now and understands the car a little bit better. Had a very haphazard start to the season, got caught up in a number of lap 1 incidents, but now that he's had the chance to settle down and work out how to understand this car, this Mercedes W13E Performance, he's really taken like a duck to water. There's Jacob Reed now. He's eyeing up Edward Apari-Ari for position there, and what a beautiful livery that Edward's got right now with the black, the lovely silver, and of course the highlighted green. I think if Mercedes decided to run a livery like that, they would have the prettiest car on the grid.
Yeah, we've seen a few livery changes so far this season as Emma Liddell goes fastest with a 1:20.4. We had that gorgeous rear shot as we always do, but Reed throwing it down the inside of turn 1. Edward Apari has to dive to the outside line to let him go through, but Reed taking absolutely no prisoners. A very commanding move down into 1.
And behind that, you got Balázs Galliard trying to get through on Sebastian Rekov. This will be then, in fact, a change. So Rekov through up into 18th place, 19th now for Galliard on the hard tyres, which have an infinite tyre life according to our tyre graphics. So we'll see how long he decides to go. James Byrne staring on the back here now of Edward Apari-Ari. In now for Jacob Reed, it's a case of Reynaldo Augusto to try and get through, and that will be up for position number 6 in the opening 4 laps of the race, through the very twisty turn 10 into turn 11 now, the fast right, and now we're running those high downforce wings. You can tell by the bevel on them. There goes James Byrne straight down to the inside. Edward Apari-Ari just has nothing when it comes to exit of corners.
Yeah, Byrne's had some fantastic pace and a great run of form all season long, snatching up a few top 5 finishes and really showing that turn of pace. I think when we went to the Nürburgring, and has just kept that going race after race after race. But we are focused on Reynaldo Augusto, who is under pressure from Jacob Reed, who makes it look easy. DRS open, pull to the inside, gets ahead before even getting on the brakes. Reynaldo Augusto down 7th. Jacob Reed another position. That is top 6 already.
That is 12 places in 4 laps and 1 corner. That is some legendary stuff from the reigning 2-time champion. Jason Green loses a place then through turn 2 as Nick Burke's gone through, and they've got Tom Kleeman then on the back of them too, who'll be trying to find a way by. This is 15th, 16th and 17th. And remember, Nick Burke is desperate for a top 10 result today. It will finally break him into the 100 club out there in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, which is a very prestigious place to be in terms of scoring points.
Yeah, Burke's got some work to do though, because not only has he got the likes of Lawler and Nielsen in front of him, he's also got to get up to Paul O'Regan and Gerard Burrell. And O'Regan, who we know loves finishing inside that top 10, so he's going to try and put himself in that spot. But the one thing we're focusing on right now is Jason Green being absolutely sandwiched between Kleeman and Burke. Green, no stranger to a circuit like this, racing in the desert out at Monterey at Laguna Seca last weekend for IAS, and it was a pleasure to share the track with him. And he's showing those single-seater talents yet again, keeping the cars in front under pressure, keeping Tom Kleeman behind, just looking to try and make those positions later on in the race at the moment.
Every position will count, and there are cars off. Kent Nielsen missing the front wing, so he's tangled with Jeffrey Lawler into turn number 1. Lawler got himself through. Nielsen jammed on the brakes, tried to go to the inside, and effectively Lawler just took the natural line, and Nielsen just lost his front wing for it.
Yeah, I don't really think Nielsen was ever there on that one. It was such a late move, trying to steal the apex from Jeffrey Lawler, but the American was having absolutely none of it. It's that aggression that we've seen so many times from Kent Nielsen, finally getting thrown back in his face, almost blocking Kleeman down at the apex of turn 5. And all of these cars just trying to find a way through on a car that's limping its way back to pit lane. And Jason Green almost gets a run around the outside, but has to back out of it because Nielsen is just running so slow without that front wing.
Yep, and so everyone's got to dive to the inside, and that is Balázs Galliard there, who has got himself through. Sebastian Rekov is there too, as Emma Lundell now moves to a 6-second margin at the front of the field. Kent will have to take that stop and switch his strategy up from this point onwards. So it's now a very important case for Kent Nielsen that he keeps a level head and tries to just drive well within his limits. Speaking of within your limits, James Byrne running wide at the opening corner, trying to make a big lunge on Reynaldo Augusto, failed to make the pass, and Augusto just scampered on back through.
Yeah, he certainly did. Byrne's going to have to wait another lap or so if he wants to try and make that spot back up. But just to touch on tyre rules and tyre strategy in this race, you have to run 2 different compounds of the dry weather tyre. So either one of the soft, one of the medium, one of the hard, either combination of those 3 compounds, and that is a legal race. And that's an awkward spot that Kent Nielsen gets put into. We know that the mediums can go the entire length of the race, but we're only 6 laps completed in this one, and he is going to have to go 64 laps on a set of softs if he does choose to do so.
Take another look at this then. So Lawler runs on the outside, gets great drive with the DRS, is through. Nielsen outbrakes himself into the corner, and it's the lightest of taps that dismantles the front wing. Got to go back to live because Eduardo Radice here is eyeing up second place and has just made the pass. So through he goes against Volta Lux, but Lux will try and fight back here off of the exit, give himself as much drive as possible with that hint of DRS he gets. It's off camber through turn 2, so if you can fight for the inside, you can really work and get turn 3 to go through. Oh, no. Contact! Eduardo Radice has to fall out wide, 3 places lost, and that could have been huge as far as the championship goes. A big wiggle saved it, but key for Eduardo Radice. He's now down to 5th, and his main championship rivals behind him. I think there's a staggering amount of netcode here through turn 3. Yeah, he's lost the rears, and netcode has brought the contact straight.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the onboard from Lux from that, but what a bit of driving from Lux to put himself on the outside of turn 3 like that and hang right the way on, all the way alongside the Italian. It was netcode that sent championship leader Eduardo Radice off the road, but that would have been one heck of a scrap to watch unfold. Look at it on board from Hagland. Looks all the way to the outside, hangs on, sticks to the inside for turn 3, and then it probably would have been moved done, or they would have been side by side all the way up the hill. Big thing for Radice though, Jacob Reed, his championship rival, 0.8 of a second behind.
Remember, that gap was 50 championship points coming into today. If they finish exactly where they are right now, it would be 52 championship points, the margin, but there's a 4-point swing if Jacob Reed can get by Eduardo Radice right now. With Florian Kamar still holding on to that 3rd place in the championship, it's all about building up the points, and Alex Hagland would be making a big climb towards the top 10 in the championship. So too would Emil Lundell, moving up to 50 championship points, and would find himself with his 2 finishing results being a first and a first in this championship then this season. So that's what Emil Lundell's eyeing up right now, a near 10-second margin here at the front. There will be questions to ask though for Eduardo Radice, because this is not A-game speed right now, and as such Jacob Reed has already answered his critics at the start of this race. I'm very much on a bad qualifying performance, going to put myself back in the picture. Eduardo Radice now having to adapt on the fly.
Questioning a little bit as to whether or not he picked up a bit of floor damage after that contact with Volta Lux down into turn 3. I can't quite see any on the car, I don't think. I'm not sure how difficult it is to damage the floor on this car in iRacing, but the pace just doesn't quite seem where it was in the first part of this race. Partially it could be due to Radice just taking his time to warm back up, get back in the rhythm, and then find that pace later on. But he's got Jacob Reed behind him. He needs to start getting a shift on now, especially with Radice being just outside the DRS window on Florian Kamar.
Alex Hagland is eyeing up the Austrian Volta Lux here. It's something out of the 1970s for Formula Racing, because you got a Swede leading, an Austrian in 2nd, and a Swede in 3rd position. When was the last time you saw 2 Swedish drivers in Formula cars, 1 and 2 in a race?
Don't ask me that question. You know my F1 history before 2014 is absolutely dire.
Well, this is some pretty ancient history we'll be talking about in Formula circles, but for Alex Hagland, This is to get back to second place once again, and this is proving that he has certainly picked up another level. Florian Kammeier, very good at higher downforce circuits as well. We've been talking about it over the season that Kammeier has been a hot and cold style driver. The first ever win of Kammeier's career was at Aragon, and here it's a case of he's definitely looking to score once more. Great drive by Alex Hagland. Will look to try and get this move done at turn number 1. Looks over to the inside at the start of lap 11. Hits the brakes, moves in through the corner, comfortably commands it, but gets a great drive out to the exit, and will have the DRS again to fight to do exactly the same as what happened with Eduardo Radiz. Now looks to sweep around the outside, very shallow from Alex Hagland. He'll have to fight around the outside of turn 3 or give it up, and he chooses give it up. Here comes Kammeier.
Yeah, stop as if you've seen that one before. Voltalux just taking advantage of that DRS yet again. And there's a lot of grip, apparently, on the outside of turn 2 that he is making great use of compared to the rest of the field. It was a great attempt from Alex Hagland to make up that second spot. But I think just going a bit deep at the apex is really what cost him on that one, as he should have had a much more commanded position down into turn 2. But as you said, Sperry, it was that runoff one that put Voltalux back in that position. And this time, both of them came out the other side cleanly.
And that's the key. They've both prioritised and kept their race in check, and the way they're going about things, they will be looking at how much time are we losing on this stint. They're now 12 seconds behind the race lead, and the interesting thing will be when Emil Lundell decides to pit, because if he does, he will right now come out in a whole heap of traffic in and around Jeffrey Lawler, Nick Burke and co, and this would be the next group to hit. Renato Augusto, Edward Pariari and Mark van Dalen as they look to change again down at turn number 1. Hagland once more down the inside, this time has full clearance and now has to dictate to where the move's going to come, and he's got the DRS, so he's waited long enough into the corner. Well done by Alex Hagland. He's in P2 for the second consecutive week.
Yeah, great work from Hagland, not only to get that move done, but to find that pace in these last 2 weeks to scrap with the stalwarts of this championship fight so far. He is bringing himself well into the conversation for top 5 in points, and if he can keep these performances up, the likes of Voltalux and Florian Kammeier are going to be worried about their spot. Eyes further down the field though, Nick Burke chasing down Tom Kleeman for 14th place, deep within a second, and just continuing that chase. Burke trying to get that spot, Tom Kleeman trying to pull ahead. DRS coming up in the next half a lap or so, but these two, one of your closest fights on track at the moment, as we get a replay of something that happened down at turn 1.
Yeah, this would be the pass then from Tom Kleeman going through against Nick Burke straight. Oh, he had to fight through the middle of the corner. The rears were trying to step out of line. He had to half catch the car. So to catch the car and still get the pass, that is a very, very well put together move.
Yeah, especially with how that DRS snaps shut and shifts the balance of the car. It could be something that's quite unnerving to deal with in the braking zone, as how the car feels just suddenly changes in an instant. All these drivers are dealing with that lap after lap after lap, and it makes it especially difficult if you've got any sort of steering lock on, because that just helps reduce the stability at the rear all the more so often. This is a bit of a pack we've got going on at the moment though, Sperry. These 5 cars have brought themselves into a bit of a DRS train, being led by Alex Hagland as it stands, and with everyone having the advantage of that DRS 15 km/h straight line speed boost, just means no one can really make any overtakes right now.
No, and I think what's even more important is, yes, that the dirty air effect there, the turbulences that come from putting lots and lots of aerodynamics on the car and the Venturi tunnels that are there underneath creating ground effect. You are looking around at this car and thinking, well, how am I going to gain the advantage? Might be tyres, and if strategy is anything to go by in the sense of how it was run by Voltalux, he might be one of the earlier takers down into the lane. Track temperature, by the way, 40 degrees Celsius, so this is expected to be one that does chew the tyres a bit more, and that will be very interesting. Kammeier feigns a move to the inside with a first bout of DRS, gets his second, but doesn't quite get the run out the exit that is necessarily desired, and as such can't get the move. Hagland already 1.2 seconds, 1.3 clear now of Voltalux, but the temperatures, I think, will force Lux's hand early to pit in for the tyre he's more comfortable with, which is the soft.
Yeah, it's interesting that you point at Lux when you talk about strategy, because I got a very interesting message from him a few weeks ago before the Spa race, where he was telling me about the software that he actually uses to run these races. We always allude to the fact that these drivers are running a lot of overlays to try and track how the race unfolds and how their strategy is going to unfold. But what he told me was he wrote his own program to figure out what the pit delta was going to be and then where he was going to come out relative to everyone else in the field. So he is running the same amount of information on a little tablet next to his steering wheel as all of those multi-million euro Formula One teams are running on their pit wall, and he wrote it all himself. That is an impressive bit of engineering.
Well, from an engineer over at AVL Race Tech in Austria, that pretty much tells you all you need to know about the way that Volta looks to approach his races, as Florian Kammerer is close right now, and we're getting these packs that are forming a Gusto with a Pariari and Mark van Dalen. Van Dalen, they're in 10th position, holding that final point, 5 seconds clear of Gerard Borel in 11th place. So certainly finding a lot of pace at the moment here is that group, and there is Paul O'Regan, representing England, not the United Kingdom, decides I want to make it a little bit more specific of what I am referencing here, as O'Regan through turn 4, then over the top through turn 5. This very difficult run through the middle of the corner. They've certainly got a lot to try and push with, but 1:21.5 on the last lap from Paul O'Regan, 21.9 from Jeffrey Lawler, who's under threat now from Tom Kleeman.
Yeah, loving the fact that iRacing let us choose nationalities now instead of clubs. I will admit, I will miss the Porsche Michelin battles between Ohio and UK and Ireland, but those are long gone now, as it's not just the UK versus Ohio, well, versus the United States when they decided to show up. Jeffrey Lawler, though, falling down the order. We saw him scrapping with, where is he, Kent Nielsen earlier on in this race, but he's now coming under a lot of pressure from series debutant Tom Kleeman, as we just take a peek at all of the heads of these trains that we've got out there on track. And I'm trying to figure out who's who at this point. I think we're looking at Jared Burrell there, and there is Jeffrey Lawler, 0.3 of a second clear of Tom Kleeman, and the Australian opting not to go for a move into one there.
Well, definitely nowhere near close enough to make that lunge down the inside and to make that a reality, but there is still many a chance that can be found in terms of making those moves and gaining those positions. Just the one retirement from the race so far, that Eric Bursma, and then a couple of drivers like Dennis Branch, for example, and Kent Nielsen, have already come in and made their stops on alternate strategies with issues that they have had early on in the race. Dennis Branch coming in on lap 1 of the race to go and switch onto the right pair of tyres for him. So there are interesting strategies about every which way you look, and I can't help but look at the fact that Volta Lux here is doing a very good job of making sure Florian Kammerer can't find a way by, and then behind him the driver who leads the championship and the driver that's second in the championship. And there you see on your screen where everybody is in relation out on circuit, and they hit the brakes in towards turn number 1 once again, and everyone's got the same speed on everyone else. No one can really force a decisive move to make a place. Kammerer close right up behind, but can't commit to throwing it down the inside at turn 2.
Sometimes it feels like there is a magnet attached to Florian Kammerer and Volta Lux, as they always seem to find each other on the track, but Lawler defending to the inside of one from Tom Kleeman behind, but Kleeman not able to make that move stick as he just lost the car mid-corner into turn 1. But one thing I just want to highlight is Alex Haviland is doing a great job to leave that gap from Volta Lux and down to give himself some space to just breathe. The further he pulls away from Volta Lux behind, the easier it's going to be for the likes of Florian Kammerer to make a move and make a move stick. Lux is not going to have the advantage of DRS or slipstream, and his battery pack is going to have to work so much harder to keep his speed up over the course of the circuit. He's got that tight and twisty middle sector to save a little bit of energy, but it's going to be nowhere near the same level of Florian Kammerer, Eduardo Radish, Jacob Reed, who can all just sit in the slipstream, stick with the DRS open, and basically just use no battery down the straight.
And on this straight, you start thinking about, well, if this is the best place to make a pass on the lap, then everybody tries to save the battery to just deploy at this section, knowing that nobody can pass anywhere else. That's why you sometimes have to be a little bit coy with the way that you deploy. And deployment is something that we don't often talk about, or we talk about in certain ways, but not in others. You've got 3 different modes you can have. You've got basically a use all of it mode, use some of it mode, and save it mode. You can only make 4 changes to the energy harvesting mode of your car per lap, as O'Regan has a little sniff at Gerard Borel, but can't find a way to get to 11th. Right now, it's a case here of Spain versus England, as if they're trying to reenact the Women's Euros.
Well, last time this sort of scrap happened, it was England who came out on top, as Paul O'Regan representing us this time out and just applying that pressure to Gerard Borel to get himself up into that 11th place spot. He just seemed a little bit slower through that chicane, opting for a tighter line on the exit compared to the Spaniard in front. And all that dirty air is making it so much more difficult for O'Regan to follow in this very tight and twisty third sector as they make their way out onto another straight. He's going to close up a little bit, but has still got 2 more hairpins to tackle before the end of the lap and before they open that DRS. I've noticed a couple of drivers using different lines through that final turn 14 as well. Some of them opting to take it nice and tight, but the likes of Walter Lux going wider on entry and then cutting in for a very late apex, maximizing that on throttle time, maximizing that corner exit time, and really carrying the speed all the way down the straight. Speaking of carrying the speed, here comes Paul O'Regan down the inside, DRS open, and then on the brakes to try and snatch the apex from Gerard Borel. He's going to get a double dip of the DRS as they come down into turn 2 to the inside yet again. Borel giving him plenty of space on the outside, and just like that, England wins it on penalties.
Oh, but not yet, because Borel's thinking, can I have a strike back at the very closed apex corner of turn 4, which plateaus through the middle, then through turn 5. Finally, it is secured, but here comes Jeffrey Lawler and Tom Kleeman then to join the party. So the American and the Australian now say it's our turn to bring ourselves into perspective. Gerard Borel will keep an eye on that and hope that he can stay with Paul O'Regan's pace as he moves up into 11th position out there overall. In comes Jacob Reed to make his stop at the end of lap 19. This is the move that is trying to undercut everybody in that train. What a decision this is right now from the 2-time champ.
We know how much Jacob Reed struggles to manage the soft compound tyre though, so I think as much as this is a strategy call that's maybe going to get him in front of all of those cars that he was battling with, he's certainly going to struggle to get it done as he just falls behind Paul O'Regan coming down into turn 1. He's got Gerard Borel for company on the outside, as it looks like Jeffrey Lawler behind was looking for a move on the Spaniard into turn 1. He's got to bring those red-walled soft tyres up to temperature very gently, because those Pirelli tyres have a memory. If you treat them poorly at the start of the stint, they are really going to hate you by the end of it. Reed, it's a smart decision, but it's going to be really tricky to go 51 whole laps at pace on those.
Well, by comparison, Paul O'Regan was doing 21.9s, which were a second and a half slower than what Jacob Reed was doing before he decided to jump into the pit. So Jacob Reed's got to clear Paul O'Regan quickly, and if he cannot manage in the dirty air to keep that pace, then he has just pitted at the wrong time, because he didn't get the gap in the traffic that he needed to through turn 12. And now looking to 13 and 14, he is nowhere near close enough to making that move. There's no reason for that group, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th at the moment, to cover, but as if as an act of God has gone and struck and helped him out there. Paul O'Regan dives for the pits to make his first pit stop of the race, and Jacob Reed has clean air and DRS to boot for this lap.
All throughout that pit cycle, we missed a little bit of drama down into turn 1 as well, as Florian Kammer tried to make a move on Walter Lux just on the lap after the Jacob Reed pit. Got it all locked up for the front right tyre and carried on through the apex. Apologised to Walter Lux as well, but that was very nearly disaster for both drivers. We're going to get a replay for it, and we'll follow the German all the way down the start-finish straight. DRS open. Lux having no help in that department, as that pink car is going to pull to the inside, stand on the brakes, but stands on the brake pedal a little bit too hard. Front right tyre under rotates. Back through goes Lux, and Radice may have had a chance to get a move done on Kamai, but chose not to.
It's something when Emil Lundell's setting fastest laps on lap 22 out of 70 here, a 1:19.8. Yes, it was aided by passing Kent Nielsen with DRS, but Emil Lundell right now is in a world of his own, 16.5 seconds clear. I would say that is a very comfortable margin to have at the start of this race, making sure that this stint is working in his favour.
Yeah, he is going to have to sacrifice some race time in that second stint when he does go onto the medium compound tyre. But with the pace that he's going, as Jacob Reed sets the fastest lap of the race, he's going to be able to pit at the same time as we predict the medium runners are going to pit, about halfway into this race, and get to the end on the medium tyres. And with that 17, nearly 18-second gap, it's going to mean he'll have to hold about half a second a lap compared to everyone else on the soft tyres to take home the win. With the pace that Lundell's been going at, I don't think that's going to be too big an ask at all.
It depends on Jacob Reed, though, who is making good progress then with the laps and holding Emil Lundell to account. On that lap, a 19.9 there from Emil in the number 11 machine, and Jacob Reed on a 19.7 on his last go by. It's going to be interesting. At the moment, we're looking at about 6th place, where he probably funnel out into here with where James Byrne is at the moment, 23 seconds back off the overall race lead, running a 1:20.3 on that last go around. So Emil Lundell's in an interesting position. I don't quite think he's in the right place to make a pit stop, because he's slightly too close to that group right now on medium tyres to say that's the right call. But in any case, it's a case of, well, can I extend it another 15 laps? I wouldn't see any world where he wouldn't out there in terms of the way they go. It's one of those races where you've got reverse strategy by the limitations of what tyre life does here with us in iRacing. It's a case now of how long can you spend on the softs rather than how long can you spend off of them. As here comes a little look, Nick Burke then watches behind as there goes Jeffrey Lawler. That's a pass for 11th place. Nothing Gerard Burrell can do on the exit of 2.
Yeah, it was a great move from Lawler as well. Set it up down into turn 1 and focused on the exit. Focused on the run on the exit of that corner, and then just got it through into turn 2. It was another move where Gerard Burrell could do absolutely nothing to defend it, as the Spanish driver does lose another spot. Lawler, though, now knocking on the door of that top 10, as Walter Lux coming down pit lane, finally responding to Jacob Reed. So the big question is, where? That's Florian Kamai. That's Kamai in the wall on the exit of turn 14. Florian Kamai having a huge spin, loses the rear and front wing and the front right corner of the car. Down pit lane he's going to come, and that is going to be a knock to his championship charge.
For Florian Kamai, he's just gone completely Timo Glock out of the final corner. He's pushed a little bit too deep. Now watch this. He'll push a bit deep. He'll get out onto the AstroTurf here on the outside. Back steps out and bang! Hard into the wall on the left-hand side. Finds himself deposited into the pit wall, and that is his day done, and a retirement for Florian Kamai. He'll kick himself on this one as he goes through 4th gear into... it's just as he was right in the high revs, trying to flick it up into 5th gear, that the car just decides it doesn't want to play.
As much as these drivers make it look so easy to drive these cars, you have to remember they are trying to put 1,000 horsepower down onto the ground, and that's only really doable when you've got a surface such as tarmac to support that rear axle. As soon as you touch anything like AstroTurf, a slippery curb, the tyre loses all of its grip, and all of a sudden you've got no support across the rear of the car, and for a spin you go, as that's another car going for a spin, and it's Jacob Reed, who was on that charge back up the field on a slightly alternate strategy to everyone else, and that's really going to hamper his movements.
Well, he's come together with Volta Lux, and that is huge as far as this race goes. You can see that the wing is turned up. Lux got out ahead of Jacob Reed, and Reed was a little bit impatient here. Saw an opening down the inside at turn 9. There's the contact around, and you feel a driver of Jacob Reed's caliber could have been a little bit more patient here. Watch then on board through turn 8 and looking at turn 9. Yes, it's slow, but it's really tough for Jacob Reed to try and work out what's best to do in that situation.
To me, it almost looks like a little bit of a miscommunication between both of the drivers. Looks really slow coming through turn 9, but ultimately it's on the car behind to make that move stick cleanly. I don't really think Jacob Reed was going for that move, but it's certainly where his car ended up, and he ended up worse off for it. Damage to the front wing. Down pit lane he's come. New wing on that car. New set of Red Bull tyres. Now he's going to really have to push.
He is now effectively 1 lap down on Emil Lundell, who leads this race, and that will be a good car to follow for Jacob Reed to get his head down. This might be the moment. It might not be if he's blinking about like that, Emil Lundell, but for Jacob Reed, he will know how critical this race will be and how he's got to just try and get something out of it. He knows he's losing points. He needs Eduardo Radice in trouble to go and make things work. But Mark van Dalen here is eyeing up Edward Apariari. Not going to happen because they're stuck behind Reynaldo Augusto, who is driving a very nice race at this point in time, lap 26. Edward Apariari looking for another top 5 this season. He got his first top 5 this season and made it look very nice. Mark van Dalen has the 1 podium to his name. That was 2024 at Long Beach.
It certainly was, and we've been looking down the order so often at the cars that are at the front of these DRS trains, and Reynaldo Augusto has been, well, the car at the front of this group all race long, and he's been managing to hold on to that spot for the entire race distance. He's having to drain a lot of battery to hold on to it because the cars behind him are not going to be giving him any quarter, but no one has been able to build a run out of turn 14 and down into 1 to get by and take the lead of that train. All of their work at this rate is going to have to be done in the pit stops, but for now, Reynaldo Augusto doing a great job to hang on to that position.
Well, Paul O'Regan loses the place then as Tom Kleeman goes through into 13th, which is lucky for some out there as far as the racing action goes. And this is Jeffrey Lawler, who's now up into 9th position with all of the pit stops and the dramas that have befallen certain drivers at this point, now holding that group of Gerard Burrell and Nick Burke at bay. He is your biggest gainer in the field, having started the race all the way down in 21st position, absolutely at the back, and now with 2 SimSpeed Championship points in P9.
Yeah, still some pit stops to cycle out, including Jeffrey Lawler, so we'll see where he comes out after all of those. He's got cars behind him that may choose to go on a slightly alternate strategy to try and jump him. But I've got to say, Sperry, the pace from Lawler for a series debutant has been so impressive. He has been making moves all race long, and he may not have had a handle on the car during qualifying, but in race trim, he has certainly been one of the more impressive drivers.
He certainly has. He's got number 21 on the car, which indicates he's got the lowest I rating of anyone, 4,200 to get yourself in today, which I think is the highest bar to entry we have seen in a championship race of all time to jump in. It's a 5,200 strength of field just to put yourself in play. James Byrne, here's a driver who runs hot and cold, sometimes gets what he wants, sometimes doesn't. He's had 3 second-place finishes this season, and he is looking for another podium to add to the books. And a driver who, quite frankly, 2 second-place finishes, hasn't had a podium finish since Barcelona. So he's currently on a 5-race drought.
He's got a lot of work to do if he wants to get himself up into that podium spot, because he's got championship leader Eduardo Radice in front of him, a turn of pace Alex Hagland, and an always fast Emil Lundell in front of him. He will need a little bit more poor luck to befall either of those 3 drivers. Eduardo Radice seems to be on a bit of a hot streak for that if he wants to get into that podium spot. But so many cases for James Byrne. He finds himself in the middle of nowhere in a lot of clean air, just running his own race. And honestly, that can be one of the most difficult things to do as a driver. For me, I always sort of need something to chase to actually get pace out of myself. For James Byrne, he's got Eduardo Radice to who he's maintaining the gap, and then absolutely no one else around him. I don't want to say he's bored, but the brain does start to waver when you're on your own like that.
I'm eyeing up Jacob Reed here. He wants to get by Balazs Galliard here, who has just lost the lap, to the likes then of Emil Lundell. Reed has got so much pace. It's soft versus hard tyre, but he's just not got an angle to attack. And now he hits a section of road where he has made moves before, and now he'll be once bitten, and he'll be twice as shy going through these corners as we go on board then through turn 10 into turn 11, and he is following with aplomb through this section. We'll now have to think about the inside. Doesn't work, and this is the sort of scenario where Jacob Reed will have to lean into his Camel GT, his IMSA Vintage experience out there as he almost kisses the rain light there of Balazs Galliard.
Does feel almost like multi-class when you compare these two drivers on these two compounded tyres, but Reed is now going to have the advantage of DRS and slipstream as he moves over to the right very early to get that move done. It's going to be easy as anything, back over to the racing line, half defends the inside, and he moves up another position. Didn't have to rush that one at all. He's basically got nothing to lose at this point, but he still needs to finish this race. And after that one, Jacob Reed up into 16th.
Alex Hagland then enters the pits from second position and now looks to enact soft tyres then as he has gone 29 laps on his set of medium tyres. He will go on to the jacks and off of the jacks and away out of pits. 4.3 seconds was the stop and back up to speed in a massive amount of clean air, it would be said, but there's the group that he's coming out just in front of there. Reynaldo Augusto, Edward Apariari, and there is Mark van Dalen there with Volta Lux, who's got to try and make his way through all of it. Lux gets one. Oh, he's way too aggressive on the brakes there into turn 2. Almost completely takes the rear right off of Edward Apariari. Van Dalen says, oh, that's mine, I'll take that one, as Jeffrey Lawler's also in.
Yeah, Reynaldo Augusto getting all sorts of checked up behind Alex Hagland, taking caution into turn 1 to not drive up the rear of the Swede. But someone who seems to not be shy of getting up the rear of anyone right now is Volta Lux, sniffing the rear end of Mark van Dalen. I know earlier we were complimenting all of the little gizmos and bits of tech that he's got to help him manage his race. It doesn't seem to have done a great job for him so far, as being forced to stop early by Jacob Reed has brought him out in this pack of very fast drivers who are going to prove really difficult to overtake, who already have proven really difficult to overtake. 6 laps on a set of fresh soft tyres, and he cannot get through a group of drivers that have been on mediums for almost 30 laps.
And the one driver this will help is Eduardo Radice, who is in second position currently, because if you can't find a way through, then it is going to be nightmarish as a scenario, unable to find any overtakes or passes. He is comfortable in that second place, 22 seconds behind Emil Lundell, who's nearly got a full pit stop on the field. I think that's just pure pace.
Yeah, it is, and a little bit of Radice being shuffled out of position after that netco contact with Volta Lux earlier on in this race. And again, with Lux getting stuck down the order, that's going to keep that gap after the pit stops nice and wide. We're back following Jared Burrell with Nick Burke all over his rear end as they come through turn 2. A spot where Burrell has been overtaken a couple of times so far this race, but Burke not quite able to get in that position. These two drivers in a bit of a world of their own right now, as the next car in front 13.5 seconds up the road from this fight. Sebastian Recco trailing by 6. We were waiting for that pit stop from Eduardo Radice, and Sperry, it has just happened.
It has 80 kilometers an hour in the lane for the Italian, who will move himself down to the penultimate box out there. We've seen him so often in races like these go to the final box, but it will be the penultimate box that he will stop at. He will go and work himself with fuel, or with no fuel, with tyres, soft tyres that will go on, and he'll be immediately trying to get up to full speed. Now where's everyone else? That's Alex Hagland coming out of the pits. He has overcut Alex Hagland, but Hagland's going to get a drive here. Coming off the exit, it'll be close. Hagland's going to have DRS here, moving to the outside against Eduardo Radice. Can he hold the line? Radice chucks it into the corner and holds the place. What a brilliant overcut there by Eduardo Radice.
I was going to say not yet he has Sperry, but he proved me wrong almost straight away. It was a bit of an under rotation through turn one for your championship leader, and Alex Hagland almost able to take advantage, but not able to carry the same speed around the outside of two that Volta Lux was able to on Radice when he made that move. But it was a great bit of car positioning, aggressive driving from Radice to hold onto that spot, and now he's got the chance to just run. The only car he has to focus on chasing down is James Byrne, because we've seen how powerful that overcut is already, and Byrne is the longest runner on the soft compound tyre as it stands.
And James Byrne will be looking around at this and thinking, well, I know what these drivers have done, and they'll be looking to try and push with everything they've got. Questions will be asked, though, about how quick you can run and where you can find places to gain positions. These two have scampered clear. Volta looks very much stuck by comparison in this group behind that driver there in orange, Mark van Dalen, who goes incredibly deep into turn one, looking for drive off the exit of the corner. They'll both get DRS, but Volta looks is going to have superior positioning, and again he's going to try searching with that long outside line that doesn't work. He gets one position though, and that's critical. He's still got to jump through the other two because Lux is falling into the clutches, not of Eduardo Radice and Alex Hagland, but now I'd put him at threat from James Byrne.
Yeah, it wasn't a great strategy call from Lux to find himself in this spot as Burke trying to set up Burrell. But I think with Van Dalen going deep into one was more an avoidance of Volta Lux and trying to stay alive as Burke takes a peek around the outside of turn four. Burrell is going to defend that one by just holding the inside line and hitting that apex. But it looks like Burke, representing iRacing, is getting a little bit desperate to get that 9th place.
Yeah, he's been trying to find a way through. Remember, he joins a 100 club with a 10th place finish, and he'll be very happy with that if he can keep it there. But there is still a pit stop to be had. And speaking of them, we got a couple. Renato Augusto's lost a couple places by running deep through turn 13. Edward Apariari then will jump him coming into the pit. And so those two will depart, and it will free up, finally, it will free up Volta Lux.
Yeah, it'll be a sigh of relief for all of Austria as Lux now up into P5. As he said, Sperry finds himself under pressure from losing position to James Byrne. He's just outside that pit stop delta as it stands, as Burke finally getting a look down the inside of one. It's a big squeeze from the Spaniard on the outside, who's going to hold on to the inside of the run down to turn two. But with the DRS advantage for Nick Burke, he is going to get the outside line, but Burrell to the inside still as they're 3 wide behind. We'll come back to see how that one unfolds. But this, who is this scrapping it out here? It is...
It's Kleeman, it's Pariari, and it's Sebastian Rekov who has to yield in the battle. Pariari just straight out of the pits into the fire, and Tom Kleeman gets his clearance then. So that then brings the likes of... I'm trying to work out here where Ronaldo Augusto's got. Is Ronaldo Augusto out?
And that is a good question. It certainly looks like it. Down in 19th, down pit lane,
yeah,
and not
out the
moving.
pits.
Yeah, Ronaldo Augusto finding himself out of this race very late on. He was doing a great job to hold on to those spots, but I don't even know where that will happen, Sperry.
Well, he's just come out of the pits, and I think his connection's dropped. So for a driver like Ronaldo Augusto, it's the equivalent of the engine just going pop straight after coming out of the pit. So Renato Augusto is effectively going to be out of this race, as we've got Mark van Dalen making his pit stop. So too Nick Burke. Van Dalen is going to come out just behind Tom Kleeman, but critically he leapfrogs Edward Apariari, who was caught in the battle. There's Eduardo Radice in third, desperately trying to break Alex Hagland's heart and run away.
And that's the thing, though. Alex Hagland is holding on to that DRS window on Eduardo Radice. We've said it a couple of times already this race. Hagland has found some pace in the last couple of weeks. After a personal best finish of 2nd place last time out at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, we've come to a completely different type of circuit, and he just seems to have such a better understanding of the car, a better understanding of the tyres, that he can extract the pace all stint long, as he's given a lot of trouble to Eduardo Radice. The only thing I can't quite track right now is how much energy he's using to get that one done. He should have the chance to save it with the DRS, with the slipstream. That lack of drag doing the work to hold on to the back of the Italian. But Alex Hagland doing a great job up in P4.
I think he is doing a wonderful job. Remember, James Byrne is due to make a pit stop, and we do expect Emil Lundell at some point to run down into the pits, put a fresh set of tyres on. We expect medium tyres will be what Lundell goes to, and then the rest of the race will play out from that point onwards. But here is Van Dalen under pressure as through goes Edward Apari-Ari. Van Dalen with a massive kick of power on the exit of turn 1 to just try and say, yeah, I've still got some pace, but ultimately will lose out. So that is now 8th place for Edward Apari-Ari, 9th for Mark Van Dalen.
Van Dalen very much running his own race, making absolutely no effort to defend any of these positions. Just looking a little bit further down the order, we've got a battle that is starting to shake out a little bit with Balazs Galliard on those hard compound tyres, now coming under pressure. That cucumber green car of Jason Green. 0.4 of a second is the gap as it stands. Green pitted 13 laps ago. He's still got some pace in those softs, but Galliard is just managing to hold him off for now.
Can I just point something interesting out here, Taylor? Jacob Reed's unlapped himself.
What do you expect? It's Jacob Reed. He's got the pace to do that.
He does, but it will now mean that I'm looking down the list here, and I would say what is very attainable right now is P6.
Oh, I think that's going to be a little bit of a stretch, as most of the drivers in the top 10 have made their pit stops as Tom Kleeman comes down for the second time. As Emil Lundell finally dives down pit lane 37 laps into this race, as it just ticks over to 38. He'll bolt on a fresh set of mediums, and then it's going to be a question of what does his pace look like as James Byrne chooses to stay out.
Well, he'll go to the final box in the lane. He will go up on the jacks and off of them, and will be back off and going. 4.3 seconds stationary and looking to charge. Tom Kleeman, by the way, has got the wrong fuel load in the car. I think he's only just realised it and retires from the race because he can't make the end.
Well, it's the tricky things of this being your first race. I think running a lot lighter than he otherwise should have been. You know what? I bet what it was is he was running a Grand Prix Open setup or a fixed setup. And it just means that those races being a lot shorter, a lot less fuel in the car. A full Grand Prix distance, 305 kilometers, an hour and a half of racing. It takes a lot of fuel, and Kleeman just not having enough on board. But I feel like that was a pretty good debut from the Australian. He's got something to build on for next time out.
Hang on. Emil Lundell's gone out on another set of soft tyres. He's on a two-stop.
No, that's got to be a mistake, surely. I can't see that being the actual strategy call from Lundell as he finds himself... I'm unpacking this in my head as we go. He's 6 seconds clear of Byrne, and a further 12 seconds clear of Eduardo Radice. He doesn't need a lot more time to build another pit stop window. All of the chaos that's happened from second on down has given Lundell the chance to bolt on a fresh set of the softs and really start to push and go on the mediums right at the end of the race. I like this strategy call, Sperry.
It is, as James Byrne dives into the pits, a good call to make, because it is about a 17-second margin here at the front. No, not like that, into the wall.
God.
Emil Lundell hits the wall from the race lead, and surely that's him out of the race. Oh my goodness me, Emil Lundell has thrown the race lead away.
The Swede absolutely dominant all race long, putting himself on a stop to run aggressive on the tyre strategy, finds the curb on the inside of turn 3, and it spits his car into the barrier on the outside. Eduardo Radice will inherit the championship lead for absolutely nothing. And Lundell, who was looking set to win this race, will not finish.
I'm gobsmacked. I am absolutely gobsmacked. There was no emphasis on him, no pressure at all to succeed. He has completely had control of the race, and in one fell swoop, He has thrown the car into the wall, and that is day done. Eduardo Radice will see that gap decreasing. Look, there they are in the back of shot. And suddenly, Eduardo Radice, who looked like at about lap 10 of this race, he was going to be fighting for about 5th or 6th at the end of today, now is in the race lead fighting with one Mr. Alex Hagland.
And you know what? That absolutely changes the tone of the race for Alex Hagland. He is no longer battling to match his personal best finish. He is now racing for the win. Eduardo Radice hasn't been able to build a gap on Hagland for the entirety of this stint. The age difference in their tires being only 2 laps means that the pace from the tire itself is going to be relatively similar, and all Hagland needs to do is stay where he is, get maybe a little bit closer, and some opportunities might open up further down the line. Radice maybe got into a spot where he could have been comfortable losing that place and moving down to 3rd, but now this is a fight for the race win for him as well. I am expecting the Italian to really start to push, but Alex Hagland is going to be doing exactly the same.
Let's take another look then at what happened to Emil Lundell. 6th gear, flicking down into 4th, running through turn 2, and then at turn 3, he goes in through 5th gear. Oh, he catches a snap, and look at that as he goes in. Just that almost looks like he's had a wheel disconnect or something like that, a micro disconnection.
To me, it just looks like he's running a very aggressive setup on the car to get all the rotation done at the rear. And we know how aggressive some proper top-of-the-line setup builders like to build those setups, where these cars can run on exactly one racing line before they spin out. It almost looks like Lundell ventured a little bit too far down the steering lock range, and the back end just couldn't handle the amount of lock being put in. Spins around and slams him into the barrier. That just goes to show the knife edge that some of these drivers are running on.
And I'm looking around, Jacob Reed here, after all of this, is now into P8, and he's 5 seconds away from 5th place.
And you know what? That prediction of a top 6, I think you might be on for that one as well. His pace has been absolutely electric since he came out of that emergency pit stop. 19.9 last time around compared to Paul O'Regan's 20.4 and Van Dalen's 20.3. So everyone in front of him not able to get under a 1 minute 20-second lap time. And I think that's all the encouragement Reed is going to need to start to close those gaps. James Byrne, though, shout out, up in P4. What a race from him so far.
Yeah, James Byrne having a great run, and this is why he is in the top 5 in the championship, because he's consistently finding points finishes. Not all the time he's right up there getting it, as Gerard Burrell then moves through on Dennis Branch. That's a pass for 11th position out there, and Branch then is going to have to extend out and try and find a way to go back through. Nick Burke currently holding that 10th place position at the moment, but there are little battles here, little battles there, and James Byrne sets the fastest lap of the race with a 19 flat.
Yeah, he's got the youngest tyres in the field, and they're only 3 laps old, and they are a set of softs as well. So running a lot lighter than we were at the start of the race. Byrne can really start to push those tyres as he's got a bit less distance to cover than everyone else. And he's showing exactly what he can do and exactly why he's in this position. We said he's been running a little bit on his own all race long, but that's what's put him in P4. That's what's given him the chance to turn the wick up when he needs to and burn the tyres when he gets the chance. He's, 3.7 seconds off the back of Volta Lux. 24 ahead of Edward Apariari. He has got no pressure on him at all. And usually that means he's going to finish the race in a good spot, but we've already seen what no pressure did to Emma Lundell.
Yeah, and he said, what a throw by me in YouTube chat with us. And of course, we've also noted as well that we love Brazilian electric maintenance companies in YouTube chat, because that's what's caught Ronaldo Augusto out. His maintenance companies come, switched off the electric to do some maintenance work, and suddenly it's, oh, sorry, you're in the middle of the race. That doesn't matter.
I can't believe that. That is such a situation that's unique to online motor racing. We don't have the same sort of mechanical failures that you have in real life, but we certainly get something that emulates that. Power going out, internet disconnecting, wheels deciding to have a bit of a fizzy, and that's what can end a lot of races. But in this situation, I just feel so sorry for him.
It's the way that it happens. Balázs Gallagher, by the way, last car yet to pit on those hard compound tyres, in 13th position right now, and that's Jason Green, who has been searching for a championship point all season and he hasn't scored a point since the last round of last season at the Hungaroring. So Jason Green is certainly trying to hunt down for a move on Balázs Gallagher, which will get him up to 13th place.
Yeah, I don't know how he hasn't got that move done yet, because those soft tyres were in a window to get through on Balázs Gallagher. And again, Gallagher's strategy call still absolutely baffling me, because those hard tyres are going to go to the end of the race no matter what. The medium tyres could have also gone to the end of the race, and he's going to bolt on a set of softs probably in the final 2 or 3 laps. And I don't know, it's not going to get him anywhere. I'm so confused by the call.
James Byrne again with the fastest lap, this time down to an 18.7. Volta is going to look at this, and he's going to be a little bit concerned there in 3rd position, because James Byrne is only now 2.8 seconds back of him right now. There is traffic in front in the form of Kent Nielsen. That won't be helping Volta in this situation, but right now, Volta I think the last thing he'll be looking for here is position number 4, because it seems to be his lucky number, finishing 4th over the course of a season. He's 4th all-time in points, and to put this into perspective, he's finished 4th on 13 occasions out of 50 starts.
That's not a bad stat at all, but a little bit of something to remember about blue flag rules in iRacing, as I'm sure we're all used to in Formula 1. A blue flag is an instruction to move out of the way of the faster car behind. Those rules do not apply to the drivers in this race, as a blue flag in iRacing is informational only, and you will see a lot of drivers treat it as such. They may defend their positions into corners, but as we have a lot of European drivers in this series, a lot of Formula 1 fans in this series, a lot of times we do see them not fighting those moves at all, as Kent Nielsen dutifully stays to the outside, leaves the gap on the inside for Volta to slide on through, and does treat that blue flag as if it's an instruction.
But now DJ Khaled has seemingly turned up to the race, because there's another one that would like to try and ruin the party here for Volta. It's Dennis Branch, who's just come out of the pits for his 2nd pit stop. Remember, he pitted on the end of lap 1, and here desperately needs to go through, and he's not going to get any love through turn 5, but Branch moves over to the inside on the exit of 5 to 6 and 7, and the pass is made for the lap traffic.
Yeah, Branch on a very cold set of soft compound tyres is actually defending from Kent Nielsen. So did a great job to get out of the way of Lux and still hold on to that spot, as that battle between those two is going to get a little bit spicy in the next sector or so, because Branch still has to get those tyres up to temperature so that he can get some pace out of them. But Nielsen is already ready to go and is going to be looking for a move in the next 2 corners, I'm sure.
Yep, and this will be about trying to get through and maintaining that run. They are the first of 2 drivers, 1 lap down, 15th and 16th positions here. So this won't be for SimSpeed points, but there is pride associated to it from drivers with the numbers 4 and 9 against their names in iRating. This is the difference between losing a lot of iRating and losing a little.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it's one of those where it just goes to show that iRating doesn't mean much, because Alex Hadland, 12th seeded in this race, up in P2. It's just all about how much you practice, get some seat time in, find that pace and really work at it. And if you put in enough work, you're going to be faster than people who are supposed to be faster than you. And it's something we see so often in this series, where throws up at some surprises in terms of who's quick, because these cars are just so hard to drive. They've got so much downforce and so much power, and it can all go wrong in an instant, as we've seen on 2 separate occasions today, for Florian Kamaya and for Emil Lundell, who both find themselves out of this race. And what can we say, Sperry? These cars are really cool and they're really hard to drive, and all 21 drivers in this race are doing a great job, even the ones that are out.
Van Dalen is in 6th position as current, with Paul O'Regan trying to figure out a way to get by, and Jacob Reed would like a way past both of them. Took 0.6 of a second out of Paul O'Regan on that last lap. but the difficulty will be that Mark van Dalen will give Paul O'Regan the drag reduction system each and every time they're out there on circuit. So it becomes a very awkward game of what can you find in terms of advantages through the various corners that you've got. And we've also got a race lead battle that is agonizingly close to 1 second, time and again near the front stretch, just enough for Alex Hagland to hold. But right now it's about Mark van Dalen, who is just keeping Paul O'Regan at bay. But can Jacob Reed unlock this pass and gain an extra 2 SimSpeed Championship points? Because my goodness, does he need them.
Van Dalen has been so often in this race just welcoming moves up the inside down into turn 1, and it's certainly time to break that habit as we move towards the final 20 laps of this race. He didn't need to defend from Paul O'Regan that time by, as the Englishman couldn't quite get close enough to make a move stick. But we know how fast O'Regan can be, especially with that DRS advantage. He may get a chance to get through in the next couple of laps. And the one thing that I really want to see from Mark van Dalen in these closing stages is actually fighting that position. It may lose in some time to the likes of Jacob Reed behind, but just a little bit of elbows out. Let's see it, Van Dalen.
Over the line, 0.999, the gap at the front of the field. This is the battle going on right in front of your leaders here, who will be approaching this in the next, at the current rate they're going, I would say 3 to 4 laps. So this is a critical juncture between Rekov, Green and Galliard right now, that Eduardo Radice and Alex Hagland are going to catch them at a certain point in time. If there is any form of hold up for Eduardo Radice, Hagland's on him like a rash.
And that's the thing, I think Hagland needs that at this point, because his tyres look like they're starting to fade a little bit. As we saw over the line, that gap almost at a second. And remember, if Hagland doesn't make it to the DRS detection point through turn 14 within a second of Eduardo Radice, he loses that DRS 15 km/h advantage down the start-finish straight and then down the run between turns 1 and turn 2. So he's going to be fighting that car, trying to get the pace out of it and hold on to that DRS. I think he's just about going to get to do it again. He does. But Radice just opening up that gap little by little, even though Hagland with the advantage last time through by exactly a tenth.
Yes, and so there, 119.0 plays a 119.1, and there's no real push laps there. This is a titanic struggle between your top two at the moment. This isn't a case, really, Taylor, of drivers who find, oh, that's a car that spun. That's Jason Green, who's gone around for a spin then at turn 3, or has just gone slow off of the exit. So he's put the power down, had a half spin, he's clattered the Armco on the inside, and he's let the leaders through. That is good news for Eduardo Radice, not Alex Hagland.
Yeah, it's one less car for your race leader to squeeze his way through. We're going to get a replay and see exactly what happened there. The American in the slipstream and the DRS of Edward Apariari has a peek down the inside of 2. It's not a committed look, but Apariari does leave in the space and then gets on the throttle on the exit at the corner and just half spins the car into the barrier. He'll get away with that one without any damage, I think, but that is an embarrassing mistake for Green.
It's tough to deal with, and ultimately will continue on because it was side-to-side contact rather than anything else, as Balazs Galliard now departs finally for the pits after 49 laps on the hard compound tyres. Will switch surely to a set of softs now to end this race out, and does so. It now means there's just one car to clear. That's Sebastian Rekov for Eduardo Radice and Alex Hagland, and all that hope and promise of traffic aiding and abetting now starts to fall away. And speaking of drivers who need help, Jacob Reed is stymied behind Paul O'Regan.
It's one of those DRS trends that's formed yet again. We've seen 7 of them, I think, so far this race, all led by different drivers. And it's now Jacob Reed that finds himself at the back of one. His tyres are only 4 laps newer than Paul O'Regan's, and we know how fast O'Regan has been, and it's going to make making that overtake a lot more difficult. O'Regan defending that position down into turn 1. We'll move back over to the racing line as Reed didn't get alongside on that start-finish straight. And Reed still has a peak to the inside, but just can't get there. The straight line speed of that Mercedes in front of him matching Reed's car, and O'Regan doing a great job to hang on. But for Reed, this is gonna be so frustrating.
Do you know what the most frustrating thing about this is right now, Taylor? It's the fact that Jacob Reed is breaking the latest of anyone, and Paul O'Regan is the second latest breaker in the field.
It certainly feels like it with how these two are going down into turn one. But again, it's just that DRS train that keeps forming, and how difficult it is to overtake at this track with there only being one real overtaking spot down into one that can lead to Summit into two, but you really need to work to make those moves stick. And if the car in front of you has the advantage of DRS, it just doesn't happen. With the way these two are scraps, they're just dropping off the back of Mark Van Dalen a little bit. O'Regan needs to get a bit of a wriggle on in this final sector if he wants to hold on to it. As Galliard's going to find himself down pit lane with a black and orange mechanical flag.
I think this has come straight out the final corner on cold tyres. It's the same way that it's caught out some certain out there, and I think he lost it just trying to put the power down. And as such, at his home race, that will now be a 10th start without a point scored, which ties Paul Hadley for the record of most starts without a point scored. So Balazs Galliard now will find himself on a list of infamy out there at this point. Now here's going to be something that really frustrates the likes of Alex Hagland. Eduardo Radice has got DRS on this straight here behind Rekov.
Yeah, and it's going to just give Radice a little bit of a run down the straight, as Hagland has been using that DRS to get and stay close all stint long. But now with Radice having that speed bonus as well, that gap is not going to close as much. But even then, I think Radice making a small mistake into one just allowed Hagland to close up about as much as he has done on every other lap so far. And it does keep this race alive. The lead fight within 10 seconds of another bit of traffic, but I don't really expect Gerard Borel to put up much of a fight at all.
And let's talk about the other fight that's going on for the last spot on the podium as Jacob Reed continues to watch behind Paul O'Regan and Mark Van Dalen, who are holding each other brilliantly over the course of this race, because Volta Lux has been caught by James Byrne.
He certainly has. Byrne taking advantage of that really late pit stop to have softs that are much fresher than Volta Lux in front. Lux has done a lot of pace management to try and keep those soft tyres alive, and now is the time that he needs to turn the wick up and really start to extract some pace from those softs, because that's exactly what James Byrne is doing. He has been so patient all race long to put himself in this position to snatch that podium place in the closing phases of the race. And now all he really needs to do is get under that rear wing of Volta Lux, make sure he gets a good run out of the final corner in turn one, and try and take that position. But Lux, as we've seen on so many occasions so far this season, doing a great job of just putting the car where he needs to and still carrying the speed through the corners.
And there is a deadlock broken at the front of the field. It's 1.1 seconds now for Alex Hagland here against Eduardo Radice. Radice has broken the spirit, and with 17 laps to go of racing, well, 18 laps of racing to go, it is so tough. We have stayed here with Paul O'Regan for the last couple of laps here with Jacob Reed, and this is the epitome of Jacob Reed's race. Stuck behind drivers he knows on pure pace he can get by, but the nature of the Hungaroring is that it is a tough place to pass, and we are seeing that in its full glory here today. Mark Van Dalen giving Paul O'Regan a little bit of a pick-me-up effectively through these straights, saying not a chance that any move is going to be found.
It's through that middle sector as well that Reed is finding so much speed on O'Regan. I feel like O'Regan's just running a little bit of less downforce tuned into the setup. Both cars obviously on the high downforce package, but maybe a slightly lower wing angle for O'Regan to just keep himself ahead down that start-finish straight, which realistically is all you need. There is a reason we call the Hungaroring Monaco without the barriers. It is just as difficult to overtake, and there's barely a straight long enough on the track to make an overtake happen.
And Jacob Reed's already been bitten as Jason Green now hits pit lane and will switch onto another soft tyre to get to the end of this race. Jacob Reed has watched and watched and watched. That's all he can do right now. Watch. Nothing has seemingly worked. He's tried everywhere. He's looked left, he's looked right, he's looked up, he's looked down. You can see he takes a much different line there, a wider line there through turn 13. That definitely won't work in terms of finding that move, but it allows time for the tyres to cool, because in the dirty air, tyres scrub more. You got more lateral movement behind the car because you induce more understeer, and as such, you burn the tyres more stuck behind someone.
Yeah, I almost think that was a bit of a mistake from Jacob Reed coming through the second to last corner, as he does make one through the middle of one as well, just finding a bit of under rotation on that front left tyre and producing a little bit of smoke. And that's something that Reed has struggled with all season long. He just doesn't seem to be able to keep the softs alive for the entirety of the stint that he's asking for. I will say he turned that around a little bit last week at Spa, where he brought home I think a brilliant P3, where he just did the one stop compared to everyone else's two stop. But he now seems to be finding himself back in that season-long pattern of just not being able to keep the softs alive.
Well, talk about this, the difference between third and fourth and fifth place, the difference, 37 seconds out there on track between James Byrne and Edward Apariari. This is a monstrous gap, and they've got to try and get by Gerard Burrell here as their next important bit of lapping to deal with. Looks very heavy over the inside curb of turn 4, and that gap now nearly 2 seconds between Eduardo Radice and Alex Hagland. This is almost looking to be safe for Eduardo Radice, who has kept his tyres in a fantastic level to keep himself honest in this one. Burrell has let the traffic go between Byrne and Lux, and I think James Byrne is close enough that if he can get and stay within the range he's got right now, he'll have a good chance at turn 1 this lap.
He certainly might do, but looks a lot more aggressive over the curb down at turn 12, just able to carry a little bit more speed into the final sector, but it's oversteer. It's oversteer at 13 that it's going to leave Lux so vulnerable into turn 1. He goes deep for that straighter line exit out of the corner, and it is going to help him on the run out of turn 14. But here comes James Byrne, DRS open to the inside of turn 1, and Lux has nothing to fight with. Byrne up into P3, and Lux, after a mistake in the final sector, drops to 4th.
Well, it's as simple as that, and he doesn't want to be there for the 14th time. He'll want to jump onto the podium. Here will Walter Lux and try that move. Remember, he pitted so early in the race because he was trying to cover off the move made by Jacob Reed, and ultimately, this is where he pays the Pied Piper back. Much better tyres from James Byrne, a consummate pass to go through, and Walter Lux now either has an easy 4th place in the back of his mind, or he's looking down and saying, do I have something left in reserve to fight for that 3rd still? We'll take another look here. It was just a wiggle through the middle of the corner there of turn 13. The tyres just slowly starting to yell and say, I've not got anything left. And there, the move, as easy as you like, into turn 1.
I gotta say, Sperry, it is one of the best ways to make an overtake. There is nothing wrong with a bit of side-by-side hard racing between drivers, but when you're the chasing car and all you're doing is just hitting your marks lap after lap after lap and not dropping out of the mirrors of the car in front, it is so satisfying to just see them make a mistake. You drive your car into the spot to make the move, and then you actually get it done without actually having to fight. It is absolutely wonderful.
And while that happened 2 laps ago, Paul O'Regan has lost the 7th place to Jacob Reed, who has now gone through and is given license to chase Mark van Dalen now for that 6th place position. If you can get through that, it's 5 seconds to Edward Apariari out there on circuit. But for the moment, Apariari is being reeled in by Mark van Dalen's pace at the moment. 3/10 on that last lap taken off. This time over the line, 19.3 from Jacob Reed, a 19.1 by Mark van Dalen, and a 19.7 by Edward Apariari. On merit here, Mark van Dalen is racing for a top 5.
Yeah, don't forget though, Reed did have to do a little bit of overtaking last lap, so to only be 0.2 of a second slower, not even that, the Mark van Dalen in front is some going. 1.2 seconds is the gap as it stands. Keep an eye on how it develops through that very quick middle sector where Reed has been so strong all day long. Already taken a 10th out of Van Dalen, already within a second. Apariari needs to get a bit of a wriggle on. He's put himself in a great spot to try and hold on to this P5, but Mark van Dalen and Jacob Reed are on their way.
Well, Alex Hagland's had a little mistake coming out of turn number 13 on lap 55 of the race, and that mistake has meant the gap's ballooned out to about 5 seconds, and it's 5 seconds then to James Byrne, who is next in that position. I'm interested to see why that time has dropped, because it looked like he was down first, second gear, dealing with a couple of issues before getting back on the power. It was a very weird moment going through turn 13, so there might be some problems for Alex Hagland late on in this race.
I don't know how much of an issue it was, as he was only 4 thousandths of a second slower than Eduardo Rodis on the last lap. We'll jump on board to see if we can dissect what happened. He was just a bit slow through that second to last corner. Maybe some throttle issues that he just needed to diagnose on the fly. Got that one fixed, hit the Control Alt Delete and got going again, and then set one of the fastest laps of his race so far.
Yeah, now a 19.2 on that last lap compared to a 19.1 of Eduardo Rodis, but he will also note that James Byrne's the fastest car on track and just did an 18.8 on that last lap. And if you've got a 4-second margin with 12 laps to go, you need to chase down by about 3.5 tenths of a second a lap, and at the moment that's what James Byrne is doing, and he'll be bringing Walter Lux hopefully along for the ride. So second, third and fourth not out of the question. What's also not out of the question is what's going on for sixth and seventh, because Jacob Reed is trying to launch himself closer to Mark van Dalen here, and van Dalen is doing a really, really good race here. But Jacob Reed, who has been bottled up and bottled up and bottled up, very much like the genie from the lamp, wants to be unleashed and says, I'll grant 3 wishes. 1, I'll get by Paul O'Regan. 2, I'll get by Mark van Dalen. And he'll hope he'll get a chance to enact his final wish if I can get by Edward Apariari for a top 5.
You know, one-stop races are often touted as being a little bit of a snooze fest, but there are certain elements of them, such as the tyre offset, that I absolutely love watching unfold. And that's exactly the spot that James Byrne has put himself in this one. As much as 10 laps fresher tyres than everyone else around him just means he can hammer them a little bit harder than the rest of the drivers in the field. And that's why we are seeing these fastest laps after fastest laps after fastest laps for the American as he continues to hunt down second place Alex Hagland. I think the race win is a little bit out of reach for James Byrne, but that strategy call to stay out so long on the mediums and give himself the chance to push this hard in the final stint has been absolutely critical for where he is at the moment.
And what's also critical is this fight of the final 2 cars on the leading lap here. Jeffrey Lawler and Nick Burke here, 2 Americans going at it together. Lawler ahead at this stage for his first SimSpeed Championship points in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. For Nick Burke, it has been a long season's worth of work to get himself to where he wants to be. He is on 99 championship points through 40 starts. That's with a 4th place finish, 2 5ths, 4 6ths, 3 7ths, 3 8ths, 2 9ths and 5 10th place finishes. He wants to get to 101, but he'll be right on 100 if he gets his 6th 10th place finish in his iRacing Grand Prix Tour career.
Well, he's had the DRS advantage on Jeffrey Lawler in front for goodness knows how long so far in this race. He's going to keep that one going, as he hadn't got a chance to get down the inside of turn 2 on this lap, but he'll stay under the rear wing of his fellow countryman, following him through that middle sector and just battling that dirty air. Alex Hagland, James Byrne, 3.5 seconds is the gap, as Byrne setting another fastest lap of the race on lap 60. Hagland, without that DRS advantage, his pace has really dropped off. Rodis 0.2 of a second slower than him on the last lap, but look how the gap has come down. 0.4, 0.3, and then almost 0.9 of a second on the previous lap. Byrne is pushing, and I think P2 is within reach of that driver.
And I think the reason why it was 0.9 of a second was because he took DRS off of Sebastian Rekov, the lap traffic. So James Byrne is hunting at this point. Alex Hagland can only go as quick as he can go at the moment, with just 15 runners remaining here around the Hungaroring, the final race before the 3-week summer break. enacts itself, and we'll be back with racing action over at Zandvoort on the 28th, I believe it is, of August. But right now, that gap now down to just 3.5 seconds, and 18.9 makes a 19.1. That's only 0.2 of a second here, and that's good enough at the moment for Alex Hagland. The worry is going to be if James Byrne can A, catch, and B, can find a pass late.
James Byrne just has to keep those little advantages in lap time ticking down and ticking down and ticking down if he wants to give himself a shot at second place in the final laps of this race. We're still 9 to go in this one. There's still plenty of time for him to get it done. He needs about a third of a second per lap to try and get into that DRS window and make the move stick. We know how difficult overtaking has been all race long here today, but hopefully for Byrne, with the tyre advantage that he's given himself, it should make it that little bit easier.
It certainly should. 9th and 10th still going on as Nick Burke looks to try and figure out a way through on Jeffrey Lawler. This still not enough to happen, and with the time that they are starting to think about right now, they might have lap traffic bringing itself in play. Nick Burke then all the way to the inside to defend with Jeffrey Lawler. I think that's a little bit too egregious on how much he's moved over, because it will now bring in Nick Burke to attack here at turn 2, but again it's covered all the way to the inside. It's a little too much in my book from Jeffrey Lawler. If he did half of the effort, he wouldn't lose half of the cornering entry into the opening corner.
Yeah, it certainly feels like it, but both of those drivers giving each other plenty of room down into turn 2. And it's always in moments like that that you can tell when people are racing on a single monitor, because of course we don't have the same visibility as drivers do in real life. We can't turn our head and look left and right. A lot of us are racing on just the one monitor, which severely limits your visibility, especially to the left and right of the car. And you start to have to rely on sound and how loud that car alongside you is. But it's why we see all these drivers giving each other so much room when they are battling. And I think it's why it's one of the reasons we don't see so much overtaking and battling. And never mind that, Jacob Reed with a mistake down into turn 1, locking up the rear axle on the brakes and back end stepping out. He has been trying to pass Mark van Dalen for so long in the final laps of this race, and he just hasn't been able to hold on to that rear on this particular occasion and loses all that time he gained in the last 10 laps.
He's burnt all that tyre off trying to get by Paul O'Regan, managed it and left nothing on the table. He hits the brakes and it's just a lockup. There's no way other of describing it, but he's just trying to get it in maybe a metre or maybe half a metre later on the brakes and still carry the speed. And the car just bites back and says, no, you've hit your limit here. Now try and save it. And he does. But ultimately now, Mark van Dalen has got himself some safety in that 6th place. 9th and 10th continues to remain a close affair out there. So too was Dennis Branch and Ken Nielsen for 13th and 14th. But right now, I'm watching James Byrne and that gap of 2.5 seconds with 6.5 laps to go. And I just get the feeling here that Alex Hagland has stepped up his game, knowing how aggressive he's got to run with James Byrne. They're going 0.6 quicker than the leaders just to try and keep the gap open.
Yeah, but we've seen how hard the tyres can bite once they get outside their comfort window. 39 laps on that set of rubber for Jacob Reed, and he locked up down into turn 1 in a big way. It's a similar age of tyre for Alex Hagland, who's been on those softs for 34 laps. That is 10 laps more than James Byrne behind, as Byrne just makes his way within 2 seconds of Alex Hagland. He actually set a purple middle sector on the previous lap, and that's where he's been making up most of his time so far in this race. He's not got many more tenths of a second to go before he gets the advantage of DRS, and he might be running out of time, Sperry, but I think he's going to get there with plenty of it left.
Yeah, and that's going to be critical, because with 6 laps to go, if it's half a second a lap, he will most certainly get there. For 9th and 10th, it continues on. Jeffrey Lawler still holding Nick Burke at half a second back there, and through these corners, 0.3 of a second, but Nick Burke just doesn't have the bite to find a way through. Jeffrey Lawler's doing just enough. It's going to be close here down into turn 11, but not quite close enough, as you can see the rubber and the marbles, which have picked up and actually clung on to the rear wing there.
Yeah, and you certainly don't want to be touching them. They're safe enough to go on the rear wing, but don't get them on your tyres because it's going to reduce the surface area that's actually in contact with the ground so much. And we've seen what happens when drivers lose rear grip. But back in that fight for P2, James Byrne now within 1.2 seconds. It's a big defense to the inside for Jeffrey Lawler as Nick Burke pushing him through the apex of turn 1. This fight, Sperry, is starting to get a bit spicy.
And that's Eduardo Radice just behind them. So at what point are they going to have to yell truce on this and allow that through? I think Nick Burke might have a bit of damage as well on that front wing going through, and it certainly looks that way for him as he's unable to carry the same speed. This will now give Eduardo Radice a comfortable way through to go and make that pass, and so that is one little worry out of the way. And I think Nick Burke, if he has to try and pit with damage to the front wing, that's going to really hurt his chances because Sebastian Rekov is within a pit stop range of him in terms of gap. 13 seconds. I think he's going to have to carry on with that damage all the way to the end and hope. Speaking of hope, James Byrne is all over the back of Alex Hagland, and he's looking for his third second place of the season. And for the moment, Alex Hagland looking for back-to-back second places. This is going to be critical. The run out of the exit here of turn 14, this 180-degree right-hand bend, and the drive off the exit. It's not brilliant there from James Byrne, and Alex Hagland will survive surely on this lap to tell the tale, but maybe not, because from a mile back, there goes James Byrne. Alex Hagland had nothing.
Yeah, Hagland has been pushing so far hard in this final stint. That rain light flashing so early on the straight compared to James Byrne. What that means is the car's derating. He is not using any energy from the battery, and he was down 170 brake horsepower compared to James Byrne. That is why it looked like Hagland was absolutely stood still, and Byrne just drove past him like a car making an overtake on the motorway.
It was as simple as that, and for James Byrne, he knows he's really got to go. Nick Burke now, he's got to try and work a way around, and Nick moves over to the right-hand side and says thank you very much. Jeffrey Lawler lets through Eduardo Radice on the exit of turn 11, and James Byrne is 6 seconds back, but I think he's going to run out of time as we will head to 3 laps to go here around this wonderful Hungaroring in terms of today's action. An absolute blockbuster, you have to say, Taylor, in terms of the championship and the stories that can be told from it. And we talk about moments that make championships, and Jacob Reed, again, I don't think he's been able to string 2 good races together for the entire season.
No, and I think that's what's really limited him so far here in 2025, and he's starting to run out of time. As we get into the final 10 races of the season, if this sort of pattern continues, he isn't going to be able to turn that points deficit around. It was 50 points when we came into this race, and it's going to open up even more. I don't know the points off the top of my head. I'm sure you do, Sperry. But the performances
67.
that Reed has put in so far, there you go, 67 points. The performances that Reed has put in so far for the most part in this championship, he really needs to eliminate them in the final 10 races. We need to see some of the Jacob Reed of last season where he was just pure dominance. He's now got the challenge of Eduardo Radice, and I'm sure that's not shaking him because we know how fast Jacob Reed is. It just so happens he hasn't been able to get those races going in his favor back to back. He needs to step up his game in qualifying, and he needs to run cleaner in the race and just take a step back, take a breath. He's got the summer break to take a reset, and he needs to get back to his winning ways now.
I will correct myself, 69 championship points will be the margin. Eduardo Radice would say nice in terms of how much of a gap he's got at the front of the field. Gerard Burrell eyeing up 11th place here, and this will rise a couple places in the championship for Gerard if he gets this move done, because of course it's all about best finish when you've not got points to deal with. Sebastian Rekov, this is his best run of the season so far. This would leapfrog him. He's got a best of 15 out there so far in this season. So Gerard Burrell would absolutely love to try and find a way through, working through turn 2 into turn 3 and the climb up the hill to 4.
Burrell sticking under the rear wing of the German as
Oh.
Nick Burke finds himself with a black flag. I think that's going to be for incident limit. Since he's had that front wing damage, it has made that car so understeery. And at Formula One circuits, we have some pretty strict track limits. And it looks like Nick Burke has just stepped over them a few too many times. After finding himself in a spot to score his 100th SimSpeed Championship point, he will now find himself right the way down the order, outside the points, and he will be stuck on 99 for another race.
The nervous 90s strike again, and that, of course, behind him was Rekov and Burrell, who will now be fighting for a SimSpeed Championship point. Last lap of the race starts for Eduardo Radice, 5 seconds clear at the front of this field. James Byrne is doing what he can to put any late pressure on, and it's just a case of not quite there. Alex Hagland in third. Volta Lux is trying to hunt late in fourth place, and Sebastian Rekov just holds on. I think Nick Burke is going to take the penalty in time as he crosses the line at the end of the race, which will add an extra 40 seconds on, and that will put him in P15. But critically, Gerard Burrell found the pass and will be looking for any way through. So too will Kent Nielsen to try and get by Dennis Branch, but having no luck as far as that all goes, as they make that progress. That was close to having dramas there. But for Eduardo Radice, who now moves himself through, a little look from Burrell up at 6 and 7. Not going to find that. But Radice is 2 corners away on a day where everybody had a reason to beat him. The issue with Volta Lux, with Jacob Reed on flying form, Emil Lundell finds the barriers, and you say that you make your own luck. Eduardo Radice, 3 in a row, and now waltzes towards the title at the summer break.
For Burrell and Rekov, this race is not over in the fight for the final SimSpeed Championship point. Burrell to the outside, contact in turn 14. Rekov just a little bit too wide on Burrell, but he's gonna pick himself up an incident penalty. It will be served as a 40-second time penalty. And after all of that, Gerard Burrell will score a point on his iRacing Grand Prix Tour Championship debut.
I don't think it's a debut for Gerard Burrell, but what it will be is an all-important score for him of 1 championship point. He has raced 7 times in the Grand Prix Tour. He's got 4 SimSpeed Championship points to his name, and that there is his 5th point, which will move him just close to the top 100 all time. But a major run as they went over towards the end of racing. Some wonderful battling that's gone through. We take another look, drive through 13, and Burrell's just trying to pick a pocket or two and run around the outside. He goes in deep, but Rekov's in the middle of the road, and for Gerard Burrell, he does get dumped to the outside, but critically, he will pick up the points and the position. So too will Dennis Branch and Kent Nielsen to 11th and 12th. You have to say, you've got to be aggressive in a situation like this one, Taylor, but final lap, Rekov's going to make his car as wide as possible, and you have to say that with the way that he's thrown that in, it does look like a racing incident.
Oh, 100% a racing incident. A lot of 2 into 1 as 2 drivers were trying to scrap it out for that final point, and it's going to happen on the 70th lap of a 70-lap race. We are going to see a little bit of that aggression right at the end. And it's, as much as it's not fun how it ended, it was certainly really interesting to see as it unfolded. And that's why we love coming back to the iRacing Grand Prix Tour week after week after week, because each and every single one of the drivers that is coming into this race is giving it their all.
A win today for Eduardo Radice, his 9th in iRacing Grand Prix Tour history, moves him 2nd all-time in points, surpassing Jordan Gronkowski for most points out there. The only margin he now needs to close is the one to Jacob Reed. A win today, a margin of 4 seconds over James Byrne, who for the 3rd time gets 2nd place, a bridesmaid but not quite a bride. Alex Hagland will find his 2nd podium in a row, and it's proving that he's got pace, with Volta Lux 4th for what is the 14th time in his Grand Prix Tour career. Edward Apariari will take his 2nd top 5 this season, as Mark van Dalen will be 6th. ahead of Jacob Reed in 7th, a day he will want to forget, but critically, he still scores 6 SimSpeed Championship points. Paul O'Regan once more inside the top 10 without a top 5 or retirement, with Jeffrey Lawler, the first of the cars, a lap down in 9th for 2 SimSpeed Championship points on debut, and Gerard Burrell, the final points scorer, in 10th place. Over the page it will be for Dennis Branch and Kent Nielsen, who battled hard together towards the end of the race, with Jason Green picking up 13th. Penalties in the final couple of laps for incidents for Sebastian Rekov and Nick Burke put them 14th and 15th, with Nick Burke still stranded on 99 championship points for his career. Balazs Galliard has now tied himself for the most starts without a SimSpeed Championship point scored, with this 16th place non-finish. Emil Lundell's day done from a dominant position in the race lead. He will kick himself at that one, with Tom Kleeman out on debut, Ronaldo Augusto, Florian Kameyer, which will pretty much put the death knell on a championship charge for him. And then the last driver over the page, Eric Bursma, getting himself out of the race at the end of the opening lap at the final corner. A day which had so many different permutations, but the one that is, I would say, coming to mind is consistency. Eduardo Radice now is a commanding 69 championship points clear with 10 races to go. That is nearly a case of Jacob Reed can win the last 10 races and the likes of Eduardo Radice can finish second the entire time, Taylor.
Yeah, and you're right when you say it's consistency, consistency, consistency. It's been so few occasions so far this season where the reason that Radice has lost a race has been through fault of his own. I think the only time that I can remember off the top of my head being back during the Austrian Grand Prix, which was nearly half the season ago at this point. But yeah, Mugello as well, yeah. But he's just put in those performances week after week after week, and it's kept him at the top of the field, at the top of the standings, and he's driving like the pressure's off, because a lot of other drivers in his position, a lot of the time losing those spots off the start of the race, would start to panic and then be aggressive to try and get those spots back. But how many times have we just watched Radice lose the spot and go, okay, I don't need to be leading this race yet. Turn the battery down, build up some energy, and then just pick a time and go. It has been that racecraft, that smart decision making that has been what's put Radice at the top of the standings and kept him there. It's the sort of thing that Reed really needs to switch on to in these final 10 races if he wants to remount a championship charge. But as we approach a 70-point gap, it is starting to look a little bit out of reach.
It is. So for Gerard Burrell, it's not the first time this season he's scored points, and he has scored a couple out there in terms of the way that he's been going about business. He got a 9th place at Silverstone, and so a 10th place here at the Hungaroring. 2 starts, 2 point scoring finishes. We are next with you at the end of the month here. So the 29th of August is when we'll be next with you. I'll be a married man by the time we get to round 15 of the championship, but the Dutch dunes of Zandvoort will feel very similar in some respects to the Hungaroring in ability to overtake. But this is one of the few circuits in the world which has got all of the European racing heritage, but has the American style oval feel.
It certainly does, with that huge banking at turn 3 and through the final corner. It is a very, very fast track with a lot of downforce still put on these cars. And as it stands, it is the second to last time that it will appear on the iRacing Grand Prix Tour calendar to match up with the real life event. And it is going to be a little bit of a slugfest. It's another track where overtaking is tricky. So we're going to see some big aggressive moves, some big aggressive dives as our field have to try and make those overtakes work. A little bit of strategy can play into this one as well. If you can get in that clean air nice and early and set those laps during the pit stop cycle, that's what's going to be what gets you up the field. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how it unfolds.
You can only catch it with us here on SimSpeed TV. If you haven't done so already, do all of the great YouTubey things, the Twitch, the Kick things, the Facebook things, like, share, comment, subscribe, everything you need to do to make sure you're up to date and watching some of the best sim racing around here with us at SimSpeed TV. But a day which, from the team here today of Dan Yeaman behind the cameras here, Taylor Mills alongside me and myself, Jake Sperry, It's a day in which 1,000 storylines could have found any which way of influencing the way this championship went. Today at the Hungaroring, it was quite simply crazy. You had about 6 different drivers at various points who were set on favourites to win this one, but it's all about who can master themselves the calmest, who can deal with the pressures out there over the course of a season. And for the 7th time this season, it is Eduardo Radice who says, it's my name that should go, position number 1, and it is my name that will command the championship now, moving forward. He's having a brilliant summer, and now he's got 10 races to convert. We'll see you on the other side of the summer break, and we will see you at Zandvoort.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.